All right, back at it. Another episode of the More To It podcast. Jay Moore with Hell Varsity Magazine, hellvarsity.com. I'm with the man that needs zero introduction, Jason Peter, Mr. Delvin Nickel. How you doing, my man?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing well. Well, although it's April 16th, and we're looking out this window right now, and it's a blizzard.
Yesterday was about 60, and now it's gonna be 3 inches, maybe.
Maybe. I was a little concerned. They said it was gonna be 6 to 8.
I couldn't do that right now. That would be brutal.
I'd lose my mind.
Brutal.
I'm already losing my mind with the
know.
situation that we're in. Speaking of how is you're outnumbered at home, man, 3-1. How is this quarantine life treating you right now?
It's the kids, fortunately we got some space where they can go out, they can run around. They have each other, which is, I think they've started to appreciate that, because I know they both have friends where either the girl that's their friend is much younger maybe than the older brothers, or she only has brothers. So to have a sibling within 2 years, I think they're seeing the benefits of it. I'll go down sometimes at night and just make sure that they're sleeping, and they'll end up sleeping in the same bed, which means they were goofing around, I'm sure, for a couple hours longer than they should have, but it's good to see them getting along, because they can get at each other too, as with siblings. That can happen. But it's I think everybody is stressed out at this point. Husband, wives, parents, children.
Oh, yeah. I'm pretty fortunate. Daycare's still open. Wife's still working.
Yeah.
I'm still working, but it's hard right now just with anybody. No one's spending money on stuff right now.
Yeah.
But as long as golf courses stay open, I'll be okay. So you're kind of my barometer for TV shows and what's watching. What's your show you've been crushing through all this?
Jay, I've watched everything. I mean, I honestly have watched everything. And that's, I guess, partly my fault. I'll go to bed. I mean, I don't sleep much. If I sleep too long, I'll wake up and there'll be something going on with my back or my neck. So I put in usually about 4 to 5 hours a night. So I'm up till about 2-3 o'clock, in the morning, and just watching. Netflix is the worst.
Tell you the last time I've been up till 2 o'clock in the morning.
Really?
Oh.
Yeah.
Well, I'm out by 10. Although I'll say I'm starting to get back into Ozarks because I want to watch season 3, which I know you probably already watched already.
Yeah. So I did that. That's great. The Outsider was a new show.
HBO. Yeah, started it. Yeah.
That was really
that one's
good.
Kind of a hard one to go to bed to.
Yeah,
that was a little
it
creepy.
Can get disturbing a little bit. Let's see. I've watched some stuff that has even the what do you call it on the bottom of the screen, the translation. What's the word they use for it? I forget now. Just
for the
closed.
Closed captioning.
Closed captioning. Yeah. But I'm done with that. I did that, I think, with my wife. Tried to watch some foreign, movie or show, and but let's see. I watched one just recently called 000. I like the kind of the cartel sort of stuff. Obviously, the
Ozarks.
The Ozark, but then there's the one
Narcos. Yep.
Narcos is really good. So I don't know. I mean, I've watched all the ones that everybody else has watched, but I'm always looking for new stuff.
Did you watch Tiger King?
Yes, I watched.
I watched the first 2 episodes with my wife. I can't watch this anymore. She loved it. She watched them all, and I ended up watching them with her. I mean, what in the hell was that?
I mean, I didn't realize there was such a big business.
Right. You heard the black market. I'd heard the snakes.
Yeah.
That people love collecting snakes, but collecting tigers.
Yeah. The snakes, they get too big, the anacondas, and then they go down to the Florida Everglades and they drop them off, and then they end up killing, or eating some little small child or something out playing, with his tennis ball or something. But yeah, it's that was disturbing. But the whole time I never felt like that the main guy.
Joe Exotic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I never felt like he was capable of like murder. I thought a lot of it was just for show, for the television.
Sure.
He was an attention whore. But the one that I thought was getting away with murder was the lady.
Carole Baskin.
I mean, are you kidding me?
Yeah, like, those ones you gotta worry about.
How do you not look at that and say she's got to be guilty of something, either killing him or having somebody kill him? But that's all.
Mm-hmm.
Those dominoes just kind of went down perfectly for her.
Yeah, that's. The first one, I'm like, okay, then I'm like a little already weirded out that he has two husbands. Like, what in the world's going on here already?
Oh, yeah.
I'm just like, I'm like, and then it just keeps going and going. I mean, that's like a whole podcast you get onto that show.
What about okay, so the person who had their arm chopped off?
Yeah,
is that
the gal.
A girl?
That's a girl.
Or a boy?
I think it's a girl.
It is a girl.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Because at first I think I watched most of it thinking it was a boy, but then I heard somebody reference her as a girl, so maybe it is then a girl.
I still don't know what the hell I watched. I mean, that was.
Yeah, it was a freak show down there. That's Wistrom country down there, Oklahoma, Missouri. That's Grant would have been, starring in his own Lion King or Tiger King.
Gosh, we'll get into him a little later. Get some good stories. When's the last time you've eaten meat? You've been on this kick, or not a kick? You're like fully embraced.
Yeah.
Are you vegan or are you just?
I don't use the word vegan.
Sure.
I'll say plant-based, but even at that, I mean, it's something that I don't really talk about a whole lot. But obviously, starting with the clean juice business,
mm-hmm.
that kind of got it going. And then even when we first started the business, I was still eating meat and everything in between.
But you're still eating pretty clean.
But I would always,
chicken salads. Chicken. You weren't like
Nope.
crushing double bacon cheeseburgers.
In the morning it was kind of like Greek yogurt. Lots of fruit, granola. Lunch was always kind of the same salad. But dinner was kind of where I would go off sometimes because having kids, obviously, it's hard. You don't feel like making 4 or 5 different meals every night. But once my wife was like, you got to do the cleanse, the 5-day juice cleanse, that kind of sparked it, I think, for me. Was doing that cleanse, and kind of you finish it and it's like, all right, well, I've lost 10, 11 pounds, a lot of it being water weight, but still you kind of just recharge the batteries. And then it was also the same time that we opened that documentary Game Changer was coming out. So watching that, and I have a heart surgeon who's a neighbor and who's very big into the whole plant-based thing, and I'd spoken to a couple other people, doctors, that cardio guys, and talking about the effects that red meat and meat in general can have on the body, and so I just thought, what, let me just try it. Let me just try it for 6 months, see how I feel.
This is about last September, right?
Last September, because I did the cleanse at the same time that the staff, Scott and his guys, did it, and they did it at the start of training camp. Was actually their first day of doing it. Scott had done one prior to that. He must have done it when we first opened, which was probably, I think, in June.
He was doing. I played golf with him last week, and he was doing another one.
And he was doing another one.
A 3-day one, yeah.
So he really likes it. Him and his wife both are in there a lot. They trying to stay as healthy. I mean, tough for those guys, because although it's not like the training table is slim pickings down there,
right.
But it's just the the short amount of time that they have. They're always looking for something quicker, I think. And but yeah, so I did it at that same time, and it wasn't easy. You get those first 3 days were really hard, but then kind of the final 2 days were fairly easier, and I just felt really good. I mean, on day 4, I remember waking up feeling like, oh my gosh, like so much of the inflammation in my body was gone. And at that point, then I had just eliminated eating meat, and I was still having some dairy.
Mm-hmm.
But talking to a lot of these same physician type people, they actually were saying, dairy actually creates more inflammation in the body than meat.
Mm-hmm.
So I was like, all right, well, I've got to, if I'm going to try this thing, then let's just try it. Now, being 100% truthful with you here, there's still a midnight snack that I have, yogurt covered pretzels, where I just can't find anything yet to replace them. I tried making my own with non-dairy yogurt, and they did not turn out very well. They were just like sticky pretzels that didn't have any real flavor to them. So I still do have 8 or 10 yogurt covered, these small little pretzels at night. But I mean, for the most part, I think I have removed a lot of the inflammation. Still have obviously physical stuff that is going on inside. I mean, I don't care what you're eating. If you have a ruptured disc, that disc is not going to heal itself because you're not eating meat anymore. So there's still pain in that regard, but I feel good. I feel like I don't know, little things maybe have cleaned up a little bit better, but obviously still dealing with some of the bigger things.
Right. I've tried. I mean, you and I were playing golf back in September. You said you're going to give it a whirl.
Right.
And I've gone. I think the longest I've gone is a whole week, but I like to have some beers and some cocktails.
Oh, yeah,
but my problem is, so when I do that on the weekend, I'll have a few more, and I wake up the next morning with a pretty good hangover, and when I'm hungover, I want like a bacon double cheeseburger and French fries.
I hear you on that. That's hard. Yeah. That part is hard. Waking up like that.
Going eating a salad is
right. That's not appealing.
No. Hell no.
I know, and especially a salad that doesn't have any meat in it.
Right.
You want something with.
You want some grease. You want some
grease.
fat.
Yeah, and you know what? It's funny because we were always going back all the way to Nebraska. That was kind of the way that Dave Ellis kind of ran the whole thing. Was if you have these cravings for things, it's because your body is telling you that it needs some of that. Now it doesn't need a greasy cheeseburger every single day. At some point, I think you cross the line where it becomes where your body's telling you need something as opposed to your mind
your brain,
just telling you that you need something. I don't know. It's something that I'm still trying to figure out. It's hard. I will say that it is hard to learn a whole new way of eating day in and day out. I think that's probably what you're talking about. With it's hard, man. There's sometimes it's just a convenience thing to eat the thing that you're most used to or accustomed to making, and it's hard to make. Let me just whip up a black bean and quinoa burger. Do you know what I mean?
Right. It takes time. It takes time. It takes effort. It's dedication.
Right.
You got to 100% plan out your day.
Yeah.
And you got to have the stuff there. And those things don't last that long in the refrigerator either. You got to use them in a couple days, otherwise they're spoiled. They're gone to shit. So you're out because it ain't cheap either.
No, I know it is. It's more expensive to eat that way. And I think slowly it's changing. I think a lot of people or a lot of companies are realizing. You're seeing even some of the fast food companies that are trying to do the meatless sort of thing, because I think it's in this day and age you can't keep secrets like that. As far as company wise, if if red meat turns out where it's bad for you, they can't just kind of brush that under the rug, anymore. There's too many people out there exposing truths, and so I don't know. It's something that just kind of take it day by day, but I do think that it's becoming more convenient with even some of the stores. When you look just in Lincoln, you obviously have Whole Foods, but then you have Fresh Time, Hy-Vee, Trader Joe, like Hy-Vee, like it seems like every time I go in there, their quote unquote organic section is growing, even more and more. So it's just good to have options, I think, because people sometimes they think of like Nebraska, they think, oh, it's just a bunch of like fat people, big people, you know what I mean?
Right,
just farmers, big, right, and it's not that way, because there are so many options. Even you're seeing a lot of farmers start to transition their farms. The problem is it's a difficult transition going from a regular crop to an organic. I think it's actually like a 3-year transition that the farm itself has to go to, but that's not the only problem. Is that the surrounding farms, because when they go and they spray for stuff, you got to account for the wind blowing and everything like that. So it's not as easy as somebody just saying, you know what, let me just switch my farm to organic. It's a whole process.
How your brothers busted your balls yet about your diet?
Not my brother, but I got to tell you, a good story was this when we were home for Christmas. Brothers, I think sometimes they look at me like, oh, this is just the new fad or something new that Jason's doing.
Right.
Right. Meanwhile, my younger brother Damien is like, I don't think the numbers on the scale can go any higher. Okay, Christian is a like the definition of a yo-yoer. He'll be 290. 300, when I go home for Christmas, and then I go home for Easter, and he's like, 218.
Holy smokes!
And obviously exaggerating a little bit, but he's still very like he loves the gym, like loves to go in. He'll spend 2 hours there. He's the type of guy, who's carrying like a gallon of water around. You know what I mean? Like,
is he still wearing his gold gym tank tops?
Oh, he's got like the FBI on it. The federal body inspector or whatever. He wears a spaghetti strap, tank tops and stuff. But anyway, so I go home and I was at my parents' house, my whole family, we were staying there over Christmas, and my father had made something, and he's a chef, but he is 83 right now, so my mom thinks that, when he makes stuff, sometimes he's forgetting, an ingredient or two, but he had made some like cauliflower dish, casserole or something, and it had like what looked to be like pounds and pounds of cheese on it, right? So I was thinking, all right, well, this is just must be like a little side dish or something that he made. Well, turns out like this was like the meal, and that wasn't actually even like the topic, but so I knew the kids, they may have a little bit of it, but they needed something else. And we had, bought something at the store for them, some chicken nuggets or something. So I just like yell over to my dad with a plate, and I was like, hey, I'm like, I can use this, to heat the kids' chicken nuggets up. And he goes, you son of a bitch! He's like, you, and he's got a deep German accent. He's from Germany. He's like, he's like, you're so inconsiderate. He goes, you come in and everything is how Jason wants it, And I'm like, all I wanted to know was, could I use this dish to heat the kids' chicken nuggets up with, right? And his way of like dealing with stuff is like not to talk to you. So
Right.
I didn't talk to him, for a few days. We were only there for like a week, and I said about half of it I didn't talk to him because he was mad at me. About asking. So it had really nothing to do with his dish or anything. But then my mom gets, so I'm like, see, Mom? I go, this is why I don't come home. I go, because when I come home, I got to deal with this shit, right? And my mom's like, why did you say anything?
Right.
She's yelling at my dad, you know how he is. And I was like, whoa,
I am, yeah.
What the fuck do you mean you know how he is? So, oh my God. It
Sounds like a sitcom episode.
Yeah, it was.
But your folks ran a really successful restaurant back home.
Yeah, I mean, my dad, he's from Germany, came over here when he was 25, but he was out of his house in Germany doing apprenticeships, like when I think his first one, he was 11 or something, 12,
Wow.
Where you're out and you're learning a trade, a craft. And that was just the way it was. And he started, I think, in like a butcher shop. And ultimately, he figured that he wanted to do that for a living. And his parents only had basically, like there was no public school system. There was like private, I think, or they were like, not private, but like Catholic schools or something, like prep schools, or I don't want to say prep schools, that gives it a wrong sounds a little wrong, but it was just they only had enough money to basically send one kid to school. So my dad was doing the apprenticeships, and by the time he was 25, he up to that point he was working in hotels like in Munich, Germany, or in different cities, and comes over here, basically like with $1.25 in his pocket, all being changed, one of those type stories, and starts to work in hotels here in the States. I think in Philadelphia, maybe it was the first spot where he was, and then got into Jersey, and ultimately then his younger brother came over, and they both kind of just saved up enough money until one day they were able to open up a place of their own. And then ultimately it was a French restaurant. That was the type of food that he enjoyed and got into, I think, just with the different sauces, and it's very heavy, type food, but I think it's, when you think French restaurant, you think some of the best restaurants in the world, and yeah, I mean, it was a restaurant called the Fromagerie, and it was in Rumson, New Jersey. They owned it for about 35 years. There was constantly rated, best restaurant in New Jersey, and always with, the max amount of stars that you could get. But it was an attention to detail sort of thing, and that was kind of the way that he raised us. Was if you're doing something, you do it right, no half-assing sort of thing, and yeah. But ultimately they sold it, and now I think it's on its like third or fourth owner. It's never run. Yeah, never.
Did you guys work in the restaurant?
So let's see. When we were growing up, there were nights sometimes where if like someone in the coat room or something called in sick, they needed somebody, we could go over there. Other than that, we could pick weeds like outside. We were not really allowed in the kitchen, and probably for good reason. I mean, like you get to that sort of level of restaurant, like those kitchens back there, boy. I mean, there's a reason why there's a high percentage of like chefs and stuff that end up with drug problems. A lot of them use like cocaine or some sort of speed upper, because it is like high energy, yelling and screaming at one another back there, and it's just fast paced. And it was, but I mean, that's just, like a whole different level. So we could pick weeds, and there were times where like there would be a vegetable like green beans or something, and we'd have to break the ends off and stuff like that, and they'd basically give us like a milk crate to sit on, and a couple big buckets, and we'd sit outside and we'd do that stuff, and that was it. Yeah, but when I was done playing, I thought maybe I'd get into the restaurant business and ultimately take that over, because it was a restaurant that had enough clout that, like, in the late 80s, when Robert De Niro, who is, he's got a big restaurant group in New York, restaurant sort of hotel, they came to my dad and they wanted him to open up a restaurant in New York City. And they ultimately, he said no. He said, there's not enough hours in the day for me to run this one. How do you expect, me to run another one? And my dad's also like a control freak, and he knows that, you open up a restaurant in New York, no matter what, no matter who you are, at least back then, you didn't have total control, because there was still a certain group that did the linen collecting and, did the trash collecting, and those are people that you don't want to say no to. And so they just ultimately decided against it. But yeah, it was fun, having that in the family. We only went there for special occasions. It wasn't like we were eating there, 3 or 4 nights a week. You had to wear a jacket, sort of thing. It was like a white tablecloth. It was special occasion type deal. But yeah, a lot of good memories, of growing up in that place.
I gotta go. We're talking about TV shows now. Is it your sister or your sister-in-law now? It's
my sister.
Your sister's a big-time writer now.
So yeah, she went to school. She went to NYU, the Tisch School, which is a big film and television school in New York, and so she went there, and I think right away she realized how tough it was for such a big industry of what people think. It's really a small industry, and you kind of have the New York, TV and film people, and then you have, California, LA, and they connect, but they're separate as well. But ultimately, she ended up getting a job at Saturday Night Live, basically running coffees and stuff like that for people, being a do girl, whatever they needed. And then when Seth Meyers, who was, the head writer at the time for Saturday Night Live, he ultimately got his late night show. He brought her with him, and from there, and all the while she's, meeting new people and, trying to get, move up in the world.
Right.
And Martin Scorsese, who is a New Yorker, and he's, I think, good friends with Lorne Michaels, the guy from Saturday Night Live, and somehow or another, with Martin Scorsese coming in there, she was able to get her foot in the door, and he took a liking to her, and but even at that point, it was still just a lot of, like, I don't want to say secretarial stuff, but it was whatever needed to be done sort of stuff. And but with time, in trust, I think that's built, only over time. I think a little bit more responsibility. And then Terrence Winter, who was the writer for Breaking Bad and everything, and then was Scorsese's top writer. And he was based in California. He was in at some point, and ended up really liking Ashley, and I think, the way that her mind thinks. And he ended up then taking her out to California. And from there, she has little stuff. A lot of different avenues have opened up since then, with like Apple TV and all, the Netflixes and the Primes and all that stuff. So she's been able to do a lot more writing. She was working on a project with Jennifer Aniston and Reese Witherspoon, and she kind of has stuck with Jennifer Aniston here and doing some stuff with her. All the while she's still doing stuff on her own as well. But it's a business, much like professional sports, where there are times when I think you think that maybe you can't do it.
Right.
You start to doubt yourself, and it's something that you just have to go to bed at night and say you can do it. You got to put in the work and everything. And she's a worker, and I think that ultimately is why she's been able to stick with so many of these big name type people, because they recognize that, especially in a world today where a lot of these younger kids, they come up and they want to start at the top.
Right.
It's hard to find people that want to start at the bottom. And she's worked her way up, so she's and still has a long ways to go, but she's doing well.
Nice. Not surprised that she's had
Yeah.
so much success. Let's transition here to a little football. You come out of New Jersey, class of '93 recruiting
Yep.
class. Give me your what was your recruiting? I mean, you're getting rid of Christian was at Nebraska. I mean, would you consider going to any other schools, or was you pretty much sold on Nebraska because Christian was already there?
Well, so I didn't start playing football till my junior year of high school, and I was basically a year young for my class. For my senior year, I was still 16, at the start. Most of my friends were 17. Some had just turned 18 or were going to turn 18. And so it was only my second year playing at Middletown South High School in New Jersey. And I really was always the biggest kid kind of growing up. And then there was a period like 7th, 8th grade freshman year where I didn't really grow, and everybody else was growing, I guess going through puberty, all that stuff. And I kind of, went to the not shorter, but kind of average. And so, I wasn't really thinking football. I played soccer and ice hockey, and I swam in the summer. And then Christian had gotten into football, so naturally, the younger brother wants to do that as well too. So I went my junior year, my sophomore year. I remember was at hockey camp and had out on the ice an injury where it was like a contusion of the thigh, and when you're 15 years old, it's not like you come home and you're like, I better get treatment on this thing, otherwise it's going to turn into a mass that then ultimately you can't even bend your leg. Well, that's ultimately what happened. So my entire sophomore year, I didn't do anything until then. I had to go through therapy to get this thing, be able to bend my leg again. And so my junior year is my first year playing football, and it was JV, pretty much. I was a middle linebacker, right? I was about 6'1", 170, right? And then I hadn't ever lifted a weight. And then I really enjoyed just, the camaraderie. I enjoyed the sport itself, the contact, the physicalness of it. And fortunately, then I grew from 6'1", 170 to 6'4", about 235, and
just in a year.
Holy
smokes.
Yeah, just in a year. And I remember I used to have such bad shin splints and everything like that. And so end up playing that year. That was my senior year at Middletown South, and end up being, a all-state type player, all-conference, and only had one scholarship offer. That was from Northeastern University up in Boston.
Okay, yeah.
Okay.
I've heard of it. Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Familiar.
And I went on my recruiting trip, and they took a bunch of these dudes. They took me to called the Combat Zone in Boston. And if anybody listening knows Boston, and they know the Combat Zone, they know what happens there. I don't have to say anything. It's just it's not the best part of Boston, I'm sure.
What the hell's a combat zone? You gotta familiarize
it's like
yourself with
streetwalkers and everything else down there.
Really?
I mean, hookers, drugs. I mean, you name it. Like, it was like, hey, every now and then we used to go into New York City, but this was like, being like in it, and you're with older kids too who probably have made trips, there before. But anyway, it was funny because we were there. I'm trying to figure out how I can word this. Basically, one of these kids was like, he was wanting to get himself into trouble. So we were like in this back alley, and there's a prostitute, right? And he's over there, in the corner. And next thing I know, there's flashing lights, right? And I was like, holy shit, I'm going to get arrested on my freaking recruiting trip, and I'm not even really doing anything. So they were able to somehow talk their way out of it. But the cop, let us all go. I went home. I wasn't really sold on going there. It was like a co-op sort of school. Now, even though they were my only scholarship offer, University of Miami had started to recruit me, and Nebraska had also started to recruit me, and both of them wanted me to come as a walk-on. They were calling it like a preferred sort of walk-on. And
gray shirt type deal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And because they watched some film, and I think they realized they went from 6'1" to 170 to 6'4". The kid's just finally starting to grow, and he's a late bloomer. Well, the coach from Miami, who's like a legendary offensive line coach, Art Kehoe, he turned out went to this prep school in Connecticut called Milford Academy, or he coached there, one or the other at some point. And he was like, hey, he tells my parents and me, he goes, as long as Jason doesn't graduate from Middletown South, he can go there and repeat his senior year, and ultimately then, play another season of high school football and, see what happens. So we chose to do that and went up to Milford Academy. That kind of put me back on track with all the other kids. Now, there were postgraduate kids that were there as well too. And the only difference in that was that when they graduated from their high school, they had the 2.0, what was needed back then in their core courses. Right. The reason I just did not graduate was because I was not going to have that 2.0 in I forget what class it was, but ultimately I needed to fail or not graduate at Middletown South in order to do the post-grad, or in order to do the repeat of the senior year. So play that year, and at the end of the year, it was pretty much everybody had offered me a scholarship. I had grown maybe another inch. I think I was 6'5", put on another 30 pounds, so about 265, something like that. And then I ended up taking 5 trips, 5 official trips. So I went to Miami, I went to Syracuse, Georgia Tech, University of Washington, and then Nebraska. And did I think about going anywhere else? Out of all the schools that I just mentioned, the one that I had like the most fun on, and the one that I think I enjoyed my time at, was actually Georgia Tech.
Yeah.
Had a really good trip there. They had just come off splitting the national championship with Colorado.
Was it 92? Was that what?
Yeah, I think it
90,
was
93?
Either 91, 92,
okay,
something like that. Washington, for as powerhouse as they were, there was talk that they were going to go on probation. And the same with Miami, was that they were facing going on probation. Syracuse was actually really good at the time, and they played in that Carrier Dome, and it was, they had 50,000 in there packed, but there was just something when I came out here to Nebraska, being with your older brother. You're always wanting to please your older brother, I think. And I think that was part of, I didn't want to let Christian down. I think he expected me to come here to Nebraska. It wasn't that, Nebraska was just head and shoulders a better program at the time than those other places. Nebraska at the time, they'd win 9-10 games. Sometimes they'd win more, but they would go down to the Orange Bowl, play a Florida team, and be that had more speed than them or whatever. So it wasn't because I looked at it and I was like, oh, well, Nebraska's a better football program, and certainly was not thinking about the NFL. That didn't register, I don't think, at least for me at that point. But there was just, I think, Coach Osborne and his transparency, I think, was a big difference. A lot of these coaches would come in and they promise you everything. Especially when there was one trip I had planned. I was scheduled to go to Notre Dame, and then I kind of got the feeling that maybe I wasn't a priority for Notre Dame, so I kind of opened up for that last trip. And there was, head coaches from Tennessee, from Texas, you name it, they were all in there trying to get that, in my living room, trying to get that last visit. And the things that they would say, even
promises.
with your parents sitting there, it's like, oh my God, something's not right. How can this guy come in and say that we'll just give you a scholarship, what you do with it is up to you, as far as Coach Osborne. And then you have these other guys who are coming in and being like, well, you'll be the starting defensive tackle, or is it offensive tackle that you want to play? Either one, you'll be the starter. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
it's that sort of thing. And it's like, are you fucking kidding me?
Right.
There's got to be kids out there that are smart enough to pick up on that bullshit. You would hope that there is, right? And I know not everybody's fortunate that they have a family that I think is looking out for their son's best interest. Unfortunately, there are situations where kids aren't in that type of situation. But yeah, ultimately came out to Nebraska, had a nice room at the Husker.
Was it first time in Nebraska?
Let's see. I'm trying to think.
The
year before, so I came out on a recruiting trip. What would have been my last year at Middletown South. Okay. And so, but per the NCAA rules, or somehow or another, I was able to restart it again with a fresh 5 that following year. But coming out of Milford Academy, when I came out here, I can't even remember. All I remember was waking up in Christian's bathtub, and it was one of those sort of deals. And I just fell in love with it, I guess, and was like, all right, I'm coming, and that was the end of it. And so yeah, and like everybody else, then you show up as a freshman, and all of like the bells and whistles and everything else, and coaches, putting all their attention on you. It's all gone.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, you're at the bottom. You're worse than, shit on the bottom of someone's shoe.
Yeah, they want to see what you're made out of.
Right.
I know we were working out one day and we were talking about, because I said, like, there was a time where I woke up, because my freshman year, in that fall of 02, was the very last year they had the true two-a-days.
Yeah.
Where it was, if you had now they don't have 2 days, but if you had 2 days, it was you practice for 2 days, the next day you can have one. It was still 2-a-days every single day.
Right.
And you went through 2 days in high school, but you didn't have the meetings.
Right.
I remember the 4th or 5th day, and I woke up, and we're in the dorms over in, the Harper Stram Smith area.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I don't know if I can do this. I mean,
right. Oh yeah.
Got my
I did the same way.
Head kicked in for 4 straight days. I don't know if it's the practices are great. It's the meetings at night that's the worst. You walk out of there at 9 o'clock, and you're getting a wake up call at 6 again in the morning. And it's just rinse and repeat.
And just being on the bottom, you're just like I said.
North locker in that old school North locker room.
Oh yeah, I mean no privacy. You want to take a dump? There's another guy right next to you, and yeah, I mean waking up, and we were in Harper, and I don't know if it was the humidity combined with the floors that they had in there, but you'd put your feet on the floor after waking up, and like you'd go to take a step, and they'd be sticking to the floor, and it'd be like,
tile.
what the am I doing? Like, I don't know, maybe I can't do this. Absolutely. So yeah, I think everybody kind of goes through that, especially when you're one of like the big guys, when you're a lineman. It's a different world than when you come in and you're a receiver or a running back or something. And people sometimes, I don't think they get it. Like, there's a whole different like physicality aspect to playing football, especially when you're 17, 18, and there are guys that are 22, sometimes 23 years old that you come in now, you're playing against those guys, day to day. And it's just, it makes you question whether or not, you love this game or not. I think that's why I think that's why you see so many times nowadays where kids get to be, like they're redshirt juniors, and all of a sudden they're like, I quit, like I'm done. Because I think part of it is they never had to go through that when they were freshmen, like to figure out if you love the game, because they're not being put through that, like we had to go through, where you really, get the shit beat out of you for.
I got the shit beat out of me for 2 years. I had to play scout team for 2 years. I was ineligible my redshirt freshman year. I failed the drug test for PEDs. So I couldn't. I was on for 2 years in a row.
Really?
Where I got my head kicked in.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. That means you want to talk about thinking you're going to do something going into your, because.
Well, yeah.
I was two straight years, which I needed it because I played running back in high school and outside linebacker. I never put my hand in the dirt. I needed 2 years to get myself able to play.
Yeah.
So it's kind of it sucked. It was a dumb mistake on my part, but it's a blessing in disguise, because I think I really needed those 2 years to get ready to play, because I started my sophomore year. But
no, that was like Christian. I mean, Christian was a Prop 48 his first year, and then ultimately red shirts his next year. So that's 2 years, that you go. And he didn't play his senior year of high school, so he actually went 3 years without playing in an official game. That'll make you question, if you go through that, it's.
Did you? I don't know if you listened to the first episode that I released. I did with Doak. He told a good Christian story on there. Did you listen?
No, I didn't hear that.
So he talked about, because we talked about. I said because I was just going through this. I mean, I thought I was a big tough guy. I came in there. I was so soft.
Right.
I mean, I had a bad like AC joint or something like that, where I was trying to milk it, and Doak said, "Suck it up, Buttercup, get your ass back out there." And then he was talking about how Christian came in, and he didn't know if he's going to be eligible or not. Right. But he came in, and he sprained his ankle really bad to where he's like, Doak's like, you can't go. You can't go.
Right.
And he says, I have to. Because I don't know if I'm ever going to be able to play football again.
Yeah.
And he said Christian, like, having that mentality would, like, set the tone for not only the defensive line, but it's just had that flow through the rest of the team.
Yeah.
To have that mentality of why you guys were so great in the 90s.
Right. Yeah, and there was. I mean, by the time I got here, there was that sort of like you were made fun of if you sat out of practice, and even when you were really hurt, if you were on the sidelines, you were still going to get made fun of a little bit. And they did this thing, where it was called pumpkin, and you got a pumpkin that was put in your locker, and for the week, everybody's calling you pumpkin or something, and that can that will make you suck up any sort of future injury.
That, or do you have to deal with working out with Doak when you were hurt?
Yeah.
And it was the worst. I had to do it one time.
That'll make you not want to miss practice.
You sucked it up. Like, I'm going to work through this because it was worse than any practice you could ever go through.
I know. It's just, he'd kill you. Your legs would be shot. And you'd think, here, I have this injury. There's no way that he can do, there's got to be, a way, there's got to be an injury that he's not able to then provide, this crazy sort of workout.
Right.
But no matter what you had wrong with you, there was a way that Doak was going to figure out and put together a workout that was going to make you want to just be the first guy in line at practice the next day.
Yeah, if you had a shoulder injury, you're walking every step in the stadium. If you have a lower body, we're doing something. I don't know what it was. I sprained a knee in spring ball, and it was the one. Oh my God.
Yeah.
I was fortunate enough to where I was never hurt enough in college. I didn't have to go through that too much. But he called it, what do you call it, reconditioning or something like that. He goes, you had to.
Yeah, and that lasted. I mean, for me, it's just built into. I'm sure it was like all the guys back then. But I mean, I remember it must have been second year that George Seifert was down in Carolina, and I had an Adidas contract, from when I left Nebraska, and while I was playing, and they had just kind of gotten back into football, so they were just starting to make football shoes again, and they looked great, the shoes, but
felt like shit.
Jay, I had blisters, on the balls of my feet. The skin was at least half an inch, maybe a quarter of an inch. That'd be about that thick.
The blisters you get during camp in general will happen no matter how good the shoes are, but you get a shitty pair of shoes.
Seifert walks into the training room as we're getting taped, and he goes, "What the?" He goes, "You do not have to practice." He goes, "I have never given a player off, a day of practice for blisters."
Right.
He goes, "But those are so bad that," he goes, I don't even know how you can walk on them." And it was just, I was like, we'll figure it, no way. I'm not taking a day off. Figure out, put some bandages on it, and I mean, so it was just a mentality that was just kind of pounded into you back then. You either took on that mentality, you either adapted it, or you left.
I hated. I missed. Well, my senior year was the only time I ever missed practice. I had a really bad AC joint. We played A&M my senior year. I had a bad AC joint. We had a bye week, so I don't practice all that bye week. We had only 3 practices, but we go back to get ready for Colorado. And I'm out there like it's first day of camp. I'm so rusty.
Right.
I hated it.
Right.
I hated my eyes were bad, my feet were bad, my hands were terrible.
Yeah.
And I hated it. I was just more of I can't miss because I can't fall behind.
Yeah.
It's not think I'm a pussy or anything. It's no, I can't. I needed to sharpen my tool. It needs to be good. Otherwise, because being out there and you have one play go wrong, man, it just ruins. You could have a great game, but you mess up for one play, it ruins you.
Eat you apart.
Oh,
absolutely. Yeah, that's just something I'm sure that as an athlete, I would hope that it affects people.
You would think.
That. You would think, but and I think that sort of mentality was still, at Nebraska at that point, and it had it had started, I think, to disappear. I mean, even Jay Foreman, who I see all the time, he says, he goes, once you and Grant left, he goes, it was immediate that next year there was already a group of guys, and there were guys like that, like this every year, but usually the core of the team, they can kind of squash that. And it's like any locker room, you get a few guys that are a cancer, and then it just starts to spread if you let it spread. Well, he says, he goes, when you and Grant left, he goes, there was this idea that we could still show up on Saturdays, but we didn't have to put in the work, like it was game day every single day, right, Monday through Friday. He goes, when that started, he goes, just slowly, it just kind of, the whole culture of the program started to kind of, change. And but by the time you were here, it was probably still here, but it wasn't the same.
To some extent, but it was here because of guys like Doak.
Absolutely.
And guys that
guys
program,
because
your training staff.
Yeah.
And I'll give our strength coaches, Dave Kennedy and Coach L, Dave Langworthy.
Right.
They were hard as hell on us.
Yeah.
And
Dave was in Nebraska.
Right.
Yeah.
He was, but he loved it when he put extra weight on the bar and it dropped in your chest because he loved to bust your balls over it. He wouldn't let until you got that weight up again the next time. Right. He would walk by you in the hall.
Right.
You're on the train to go do it at lunch, and he'd be acting like faking like he can't get the chest off your bar, or you drop the He loved breaking you down because he wanted to see what you got.
Yeah.
And that was a really good job. I can't say Coach Blake. I will say Bill. Bill was a hard ass.
Yeah.
Like he was a hard ass.
Yeah.
We had some physical ass practices, but again, it was just the whole dynamic. Everything's weird, but you still have those people, those core people.
Yeah.
But that's what you need.
Yeah.
This isn't. I was just thinking, in any sport in general, you gotta have people that are willing to push those buttons and not being worried about if I'm gonna be liked,
right,
or if I'm gonna be,
absolutely,
or whatever. It's a crazy dynamic, but you have to have it.
Absolutely. And there have been great players over the years here at Nebraska who, not named captain, that have been, just, field generals. I mean, Tommy Frazier, is the first person that comes to mind. I mean, like, you either loved Tommy or you hated him. But when he walked out on the field, you knew that the guy that was taking the snaps was going to give it everything that he had, and he wasn't going to let anybody around him half-ass it. He'd call you out, and that was just sort of the culture, back then. But yeah, I mean, you need guys like that are just going to push. They're going to continue to push, and that started, prior to me getting here. I mean, you mentioned the story Doak tells about Christian, but that sort of thing had the seed had been planted already. It had started, to grow, and then I think just with each year, there's a group of guys that are able to see what the guys before them did, and then they add a little bit more, and then a little bit more the next year, and a little bit more. And, like, I don't know if I come in, or Grant comes in, or, Kyle Vandenbosch comes in, or Dominic, whoever, if they don't come in and things aren't the way that they are, and they just say, oh, that's the way it is. You know what I mean? I'm not looking to change. Like, that's the way that it's being run. Like, so I want to do it even more. Right. At some point then that was lost. And, that's the struggle now to try to find it, especially in a day like today where it is about, they think it's all about them. Which is ironic because, Nebraska just makes the announcement a month or so ago about the whole branding thing.
Right, name and likeness, yeah.
So it's a tough world. I think you're dealing more like with psychology of these kids today and how to motivate them. I don't know if it's necessarily as easy as saying you either do it or you're gone.
What helps is having some depth, because if you don't do it, someone else behind you is going to do it.
Yeah.
So you either get with it or you're not playing, because depth. Like, well, shit, he's got to play because we got some slapdick behind him who can't play a lick. So he's got to, and that player knows it too. It's like, I ain't got no one pushing me.
Yeah.
That's.
Yeah. I mean, that's recruiting. As much as I dislike it, it's
the lifeblood, man.
It's what it is. Yeah. And I think it always has been, but it just wasn't as talked about. It's just like I was saying before, like, with the heart stuff, and eating meat. It's like you can't just do stuff and not let people, like, there's just too much exposure, too many people. Like, everybody's got a voice now with social media and everything else, and with recruiting now, it's something that people are talking about. Football is huge. College football is huge business. If the NFL owns Sundays, college football on Saturdays.
It's going to say what we're dealing with right now with recruiting and what's going on, with the whole COVID stuff. People want to throw out information so they get the most clicks and the views.
Yeah.
So there's more than one recruiting site now, so they want to throw out all these promises and projections and what this kid's going to do so they can get the clicks. But it's not fair to the kid. And it sets the kid up for failure. And that's the hardest thing, is because some kid comes in, he's like, hey, this guy's the next Jason Peters, next Grant Wistrom, he's the next Tommy Frazier. It's like, well, this guy hasn't even played a damn snap yet. And he's all of a sudden an All-American. And it's just,
I hear you.
It's
I mean, even I look at, like, my own career, like, it didn't really start to, like, blossom until my junior year. Like, my sophomore year, I was a starter on the 95 team, but you go out there for the first time as a starter, and it's like, I just don't want to f up.
Yeah, that was me. I
got all these dudes around me, right? Like, that are like, all conference, all American sort of guys. And you're just holding on by the skin of your teeth. Like, I just didn't want to f up. Like, I wasn't even thinking like, oh, I need to have, a sack or something in this game. It was like, okay, Coach McBride just says my responsibility is to shut down the run. I was playing run until maybe I got into my pass rush like 2 seconds after the ball was already thrown. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I was the same way. I was exactly the same way. My junior year that's when it finally took off. But it was not, I don't want to say I was happy I was finally playing, but like, oh my gosh, I'm finally playing. Like,
but it's another year, like, in a system, you're more comfortable. You realize, like, I imagine it's the same, like, for you with golf. Like, you look at a course and you realize, like, where you can miss, where you can't. Like, with football, like, as a player, as a defensive lineman, you realize, like, when you can take a chance, when you can risk doing something because there's some help maybe on this side or that side. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I had recorded with Stu Bradley, and the why. Why you're doing this? Like, what's why? Because you know the why, and we said that we sometimes struggle because we didn't know the why. And well enough, and defensively, it's like, and it was more offensively too. It's like, why is this split between the tackle and guard like this? Why is this split between the tight end and tackle like this? Why is this fullback offset to your side? Why are these tight splits? It's like.
Yeah, and to be honest, that was all, like, new stuff for me, going all the way through till I got to the NFL. Coach McBride never wanted to, like, swamp us down with the details of that. He wanted us just to play football, and it was a style of football.
But you guys worked your asses off though on schemes though up front, how to play blocks in certain.
I mean, there would be days.
He's been on the show so many times, the Hell Varsity show, talking about. I mean, he's like he begged for more individuals so he can work on the schemes.
There would be days where we'd be down in the pit for half the practice, and it would be one of those deals where you'd have 3 linemen and one, defensive
And
tackle,
he's
and he's behind,
yep.
and he's telling the guy
Yep.
this, and we would just do that over and over again. So that's when I felt most comfortable, like when I was just down there and you're just reacting. Like I know this, like this guy's coming this way, this guy's going that way, this guy's releasing, inside like that. Like I know exactly where that ball is going. When I got to the NFL, first year it was a transition like into a new sort of defense and playing, like in the 50 front as an end, and you're just trying, to hold guys up and stuff like that. But my next year, then I'm playing defensive end, and it's like a whole different thing. Like now it's like there's not as much reaction as recognizing that back is just like half of a step outside of like where he should be. Do you know what I mean?
Right.
And it's a lot more sort of thinking. There still was an aspect being in like that 40 front where we're still just kind of attacking. And you're kind of reacting along the way, but he never really wanted to swamp us down. Charlie did with like a lot of like watching 10 hours of the opponent's game film.
I always said as a defensive lineman, watching film you did it, but it wasn't a necessity.
Right.
Because you
There's
have
only so much stuff.
you have to play your rules.
Right.
You have to play within the scheme.
Right.
You can't just freelance it. Like
and
know,
the linemen are going to tell you.
Right.
Those guys are going to tell you everywhere. I don't care what play it is. I mean, obviously there are some where they're pulling and it's going the opposite way, and you just have to react to that the best that you can. But for the most part, 90% of the plays, those guys are going to tell you exactly where that ball is going.
Well, they're fat slobs, so they got their they're leaning eyes because they know I got to get this guy cut off. So they're leaning, and then they got to get So they're always telling how. So Doug told a story on the pod. He said that were you roommates with Christian?
Yeah.
For the most time,
yeah.
And he was an absolute clean freak.
Yeah, he's anal, man. That's where I kind of learned like my OCD sort of stuff.
I mean, because I've ridden your car. You keep a nice, tidy car.
It's clean. And it's funny because my wife just said to me, since all this stuff has been going on, and we're trying to figure out, ways of keeping the kids busy, she goes, I think maybe you should teach them a class. And she's like, I'll be part of, you can teach me too on how to organize. And because Christian took it to a whole different level. Like his fucking t-shirts were like measured with rulers. Like, and they had to be like folded perfectly, and I mean socks were a certain way, and just like the house itself was just so clean.
I was similar. I mean, I wouldn't go to that, but I loved clean, looks good, because nothing's worse when you walk into a house and it's just uncomfortable. I know. And I lived with slobs, man.
Oh yeah,
absolute slobs. That could just it was the worst.
Right. Well, it's like if everything around you is clean and organized, it like removes this clutter from your brain. I don't care like who you are. If you have like chaos around you and nothing is put in place, nothing's organized, you can't find something when you need it. Like how can how can you operate successfully like that? The cards are stacked against you. If
I put my kid's toy away 6 times a day.
Yeah.
I don't care if he takes them out. I can't.
Right.
If he's done playing with it, I'm putting it away.
Right.
I can't handle just sitting here.
Yeah. No. So that's the same. That's how I am. I mean, I was like that. I wasn't a slob when I was with him, but certainly then seeing how organized he was and everything. Like he would like write down everything like scheduling and stuff, like when he's gonna be at the gym, this and that, and it's just it's beneficial, I think, and it's no different than like a coaching staff in the way that a whole day is planned out. I mean, those guys, especially nowadays, I mean, they basically have time to take a shit scheduled in, like gonna have a chew this time, you know what I mean?
It's like Yeah, you got to. I'm always a big to-do list. I got my phone app, and it's just like, okay, what do I gotta get done? I just mulched my yard yesterday. It's been on there for 2 weeks. Been driving me nuts. And now it's freaking looking outside this window. I mean, it's holy.
See, but even
hell.
like even
Snow
like
everywhere.
with me, like I don't like having it on tech. Like I need to see it.
Right.
Like I'm always at it with my wife when it comes to the kids because she's like, well, just put it on the calendar. On,
Yeah, like
you know,
yeah,
the phone
Google
calendar.
yeah.
But some days I'll wake up and I won't look at it.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
So like I want like a big chalkboard where it's like, okay, you see, this is the time, and they have to see it. I have to see it because you can't walk in this room without seeing it. Yeah. So.
That's.
But I think that's just us as athletes,
Yeah,
especially
structure.
athletes that have gone past high school and
Attention to
stuff.
detail,
I mean you have to be a whore to your detail.
Yeah, anal.
Yeah.
Very, very anal. How? I mean, your book that came out. What brought you to do this, and how does that go about a guy writing because obviously you're not an author, but
Right.
Who was the one guy who suggested it that you need to write a book?
So
I've never asked this because I'm curious myself.
So trying to think. So it goes back to I remember like when I was at first kind of like the seed was first planted. I remember I was in in some of these treatment facilities, and you're talking about your experiences and everything. And I remember there was a guy in there who was of California sort of royalty, like movies and stuff like that. And he kind of was like, oh man, he's like, you got to do a book or something, with some of this stuff. And at that point, it was just like, whatever. But then I got out and was getting my life back together. I did a couple of those HBO real sports shows. And somebody at some point, I can't remember exactly who, was like, if you end up doing this, like your story can help other people. Like could be another high school football player who's just hurt his ankle or something, and nowadays maybe what we dealt with in college they're dealing with even younger with the access that they have to things. And so somebody mentioned the fact that it was something that could be beneficial, and so I did a few of those. I started to do more like interviews. People wanted to know kind of what was up with me. I disappeared kind of for a while dealing with all that shit, and it was my father-in-law was friends with a writer. He was a cop out in like San Diego or something, and his name was Joseph Wamba, and he had written a handful of like cop thrillers, like really considered a successful writer. And we kind of, I think, floated the idea of doing a book to him. And he was like, yeah, sounds great. He's like, a million people have ideas. You need to talk to book people about it. And so he put us in touch with, a few different people, I guess, that he knew in the business along the way. And we just kind of, presented what I guess the book would look like. And they basically said, well, what you need to do is, you need an agent, you need a writer, somebody who could actually, create something that you could hand to a book person and be like, this is some examples of it. And so was fortunate that his agent or an agent that he had used was a sports guy, a sports fan, and basically took me on, not necessarily as a client, but hey, if it works, then I could be your agent. If not, then no harm, no foul, whatever. And we the first thing that we had to do was find a writer, and he found a bunch of sports guys, some that you would have recognized. I can't remember exactly, but they were, SI sort of guys or ESPN kind of guys. And then there was a few that were just more writers, that had written stuff before. Maybe some of them had written, drug sort of, books, stuff like that. And so all I did was had phone conversations with 5 or 6 of these guys, and I realized it was either they were familiar with sports but had no idea about the addiction side, or they were familiar with the addiction side, had no idea with sports. And I thought it was easier for me to explain, especially with the guy that we ended up going with was Tony O'Neill, and he's from England, and he's a former drug addict. I thought it would be easier for me to teach him, or to tell him about how the obsessiveness and the craziness of Nebraska football, because of him growing up in England, where they see that sort of behavior over their soccer teams. So it's basically just changing, the name on the top from, Manchester United to University of Nebraska. And so ultimately decided I was most comfortable with him because there was drug stuff, analogies, there was stuff that sometimes I didn't even know how to put into words, but he did. And so basically we just wrote a few chapters, and we took it back to those companies that Joseph Wamba, the publishing companies. And I would say if we went to 4 of them, 3 of them were like, it's been done.
Really?
No thanks. Yep. And St. Martin's, which is a big publishing company, and it's in its own right. They're a sub company of Macmillan, but they were like, yeah, we think you got something there, and so we ended up just agreeing contract. There was no 7-figure sort of deal. And basically it was just, an advance. Anything that was given, I want to say it was like $30,000. And it's not like it's a free $30,000. They're going to take that $30,000 out of the first, $30,000 worth of books that sells. We then just, he would send me questions, and I didn't know how, I probably should have opened up like a Word document or something, but he would send me these questions on email, and I would just respond back with like 10, 20 pages of just email, and he would, disappear for a couple months, and then he'd just, a few months later, he'd send me back these chapters that were just shaped and everything.
And you just approve. You just say this looks good.
And yeah, I mean,
did you have final say? This is how I like myself.
Yeah,
this is how I like
absolutely.
it portrayed.
Yep. And the thing, all he did was, like I said, shape it. He didn't put any words in my mouth, and that's the thing. All my the people that really know me, when they read the book, the thing that they would say, they'd be like, it sounds like it's just coming right out of your mouth. It sounds like you're sitting in front of me, just, telling me the story. And
I read the book in one day. I was stuck in the airport. I was flying out to San Francisco for training camp.
Right.
And something happened where I had flight got canceled, missed it, so I spent all day in the airport.
Right.
I literally knocked it out in one day.
Really?
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, it was a lengthy experience. I mean, it was 3-4 years almost, from start to finish, where it finally came out. And then I remember saying to my wife, because it kind of came, like the whole book thing came from her side of the family with her dad, and his friend, with opening the door for me. And I remember saying to her, I'd be like, I don't know if you're gonna want me to, like there's some shit, and she said to me, she's like, if you're going to do it, she goes, and I want you to do it because if it helps people. And at this point, she had seen like the reaction to like some of like the articles or the HBO shows, like how it affected people who would send me letters and say, my brother or my dad or somebody, and this story, like your story, I think could help, and so she saw that side of it where it could help people. And I was like, there were certain things where I wasn't sure, like if I was going to stay married or not after, like if you were to read that stuff about your wife, like it'd be hard. It'd be like shit, and she was like, you gotta be just 100% honest, and you gotta put that stuff in there. And I did, and she was all for it. And then they sent us like the book before the book comes out for, like they'll send it to different, writers and ESPN and places to review it. And she read it, and I knew like, like I knew she was not going to be like, I knew it. And she had a hard time. And I said to her, I said, just say the word. I said, and I'll call them. I'll say we're out, and I'll just pay them money back or whatever. And I won't do it. And she's like, no. She's like, it's gonna help. She's like, this book will help people. And so we did it. And so now they refer to the book at St. Martin's as the book that just keeps selling. Like most of them, because in Nebraska, it's like there's always like people, they just love, they're warriors. Do you know what I mean? They love guys that, battled for their program. You know what I mean? And so it's
Didn't you say that it's like number one selling? It was over in Europe somewhere. Like, was that? We were playing golf one time. I thought you said just hit like number one selling book, and God, was it over? Maybe not. I can't remember.
I don't remember. I mean, my memory is bad at this point. But
Germany maybe or something crazy. I can't remember, or something like that.
I don't know, but the book company itself, like they obviously own certain rights and everything, and they put a copy of it out, I know, in England, and it's called like Millionaire Junkie.
That's
right?
I mean, that's what we were talking about. Yeah.
And I don't know, like they would laugh because they changed some of the terminology in it to make it almost sound like it was a British guy. Like some of like the words, like they use like pissing, and stuff like that. So they would swap out some of these words, and then but like people reading it over there be like, this is an American football player. Why is he, saying pissing? And, like, so I don't know. It's interesting how, the whole books side of things works, but it was a good experience. I mean, to see, a lot of people, the way that, especially people that have addiction in their family, there was I think part of why I wanted to do it also, besides the fact of helping, others, was that I think a lot of people, they just thought, oh, here's this guy, he's got this drug problem, like he just woke up and just decided like, oh yeah, he's going to start doing cocaine or something, I mean, you go back and like, I didn't even know what pain pills were until I got here to Nebraska. And certainly didn't know anything about abusing them or scamming a doctor or anything like that. It was I was completely naive to all that stuff. And I mean, the truth of the matter was, I think the addiction continued to grow because of my almost addiction and love for the sport of football. And like there is the whole, you can't make the club in the tub sort of mentality. And when you get to the league, you do whatever you need to do to make sure that you're out on the field, because you're just a piece of property for them. If they're not getting anything out of it, or you're not out on that field, then they'll just next guy up, and so in the beginning it was a matter of, hey, I got to do this so that I can practice today, or there was a lot going on inside this body in terms of injuries. I think my body just got to the point where it hit its max number of hits it could take. The neck just couldn't hold up anymore. The low back, my shoulders, stuff like that, and it all just kind of fell apart. But it was the addiction grew, I think, into an addiction, because I was trying to, because I wanted the Panthers, I wanted ownership to, do you know what I mean? Like, I wanted to make it worth for them. Right,
because you're 14th overall. Right. You want to say you made a really good investment.
I could have fucking sat on thing and been like, my neck or my shoulder hurt today. I'm not fucking going out there. But it was like, fuck that. They invested in me. I'm gonna make sure that they get their money's worth. Right. So yeah, whatever.
When you started telling your story, was it a hard pill to swallow? Cause for me, for instance, I missed my redshirt freshman year because I tested positive for PEDs. Like, I had a hard time saying that. It was a secret. Like, no one knew. I had a hard time until I started going into combine interviews. They're like, hey, you're going to have to tell teams that. Like, why didn't you play your redshirt freshman year? Yeah. And it was tough because it was hard because I was embarrassed. Yeah. I was extremely embarrassed because we have big egos and big prides now. Yeah, and like you make a mistake, and it's like, damn, I have to admit that. Was it hard, or was it you kind of was like, you know what, this is part of the process of me kind of moving on, getting over it?
Yeah, I don't know if I had. It had become, I think, more of a front page sort of topic. Even from the time when I was in college to the time that I was done in the NFL, just a matter of 10 years, I think it had become something that people were. Like, you couldn't hide it. Like, you had to, if you were going to get over this thing, you had to be able to talk about it.
Own it.
And to own it. And so I think, that part for me was not as bad as I thought. I think the thing that always still, I think, eats me up the most was that I feel like I let the franchise down, and that, certainly anytime somebody mentions the word bust, it's like, I'm past that point, but it's still like, dude, you don't fucking know. Like, okay, like, every fucking year, like, at the start of the year, inside that franchise, it was like, all right, like, Jason's healthy, like, he's gonna get the, he's gonna be a Pro Bowler, like, you know what I mean? Like, they would come, like, in terms of like the leadership, like on the defense, stuff like that, and they'd be like, you got to be the guy, and it would be great until then. It just wasn't, like, something would happen, and when you get injured in the NFL, it's like you're not part of the team.
No,
it's like you're living a whole different life.
You run into people. I still went to meetings. I still stayed out there, but a lot of times I was on IR. A lot of times guys would just be like, later, I'm going to get my rehab somewhere else. I stayed because I was young. Right. But yeah, it was, I couldn't go to practice. I was meetings, I do treatment, meetings, then go home. They go to practice, I went home. Right. And now I'm stuck at home by myself in California in my apartment from 1 o'clock to, until the next morning. You want to talk about some depressing shit? Like, that's I know. So yeah, that was probably the hardest thing, or the thing. And I had a good relationship with the owner, and it was where you just you didn't want to let the guy down. I think more owners are learning and operating more like
college atmosphere, because if the guys, if you're good to them, like they'll want to.
Yeah, you got to see that you care.
Yeah, right.
But guys, even though how it's the biggest, most cutthroat business in the world,
yeah,
you still have to show that you care. Even though they can still care, but it's still a numbers game and it's still a business.
Right.
He'll get cut just like that.
Right. Yeah.
But there's still got to be some sort of because
Yeah.
you're some. I mean, I was with the 49ers and ownership was around a lot. The Yorks were around a lot. When I was with the Rams, ownership was not around at all.
Right.
I was with Titans. I was only there for a few months, but
with the Rams, that was still Georgia, right?
Yeah, I think so. Whatever it had been 2009, 2010.
Maybe she had sold.
Yeah, I think she just sold. But yeah, there's got to be. I mean, the York Jed would come in and hang on the locker room.
Yeah.
And some guys didn't like it because he's not a player.
Right.
But it's I think he was trying to show though.
Right.
Hey, I want to get to know you guys. I care. But no, that's that business, man.
Yeah.
It's
you see it even today, with Patriots. I mean, I think I think what's his face, the owner Kraft.
Yeah.
If it was up to him, he probably would keep Brady till he couldn't walk anymore. But Belichick, it's different for those guys.
Yeah.
Which is, I think, why Brady probably has, if they play the Patriots, he's got that start on his calendar already. Do you know?
Yeah. Do you still like watching NFL?
I'll watch. I enjoy watching Saturdays. Better,
I like watching college football way more.
I mean, I'll watch a game, when it's on the NFL.
Well, we've been going for 90 minutes now. I feel like we go a little longer, but we'll let you get on with your business. I always got to end off with my 3 and out here. One concert you have left to go to. They can be either dead or alive, a band. Who's that one concert you're going to?
Led Zeppelin.
Is that one, my man? My man, that's
that's
mine. I did say mine, but someone did. I did Kenny Bell. He said Queen.
Yeah.
After
watching that
Queen
movie,
yeah.
Oh, dude, that was.
Yeah. Led Zeppelin's. Yeah.
Yeah, but Led Zeppelin. I mean, and then it's just like once you start listening to them, and it's just like, oh my god, this music just transcends in all time.
It's everything.
It's
the soul. Robert Plant. I mean, it's Jimmy Page. It's an absolute thing of beauty. Celebrity crush.
Let's see. I think my wife always asks me this, and I always tell her I don't have one.
Mine's Scarlett Johansson.
Scarlett.
I want the Scarlett.
10 years ago.
The Scarlett. Correct. I want the Scarlett. We had that new Netflix show with her short hair. I'm just like, the Scarlett Johansson where she does the movie with Bradley Cooper. Or I think she's just not that into you, or he's not that into you. Yeah. Where she walks out of hides in the closet. Yeah. That's the Scarlett Johansson. That's my celebrity crush.
Yeah. Someone like Kate Upton is sexy. I think. Trying to think right now. Gosh, almost need some notice on that one. Let me think.
I could have gave a heads up. That was my bad.
All right, no, I answer that. Go to the next one.
Okay.
See if I can.
So we're talking about the book. Is there? I'm going to ask you who plays you in a movie, but has there ever been any discussion about this going into a movie?
Yeah. So, we kind of wrote it in that regard. It almost reads like a movie, and there was a handful of interest. There were some guys, some producers, writers that had some B-rated, kind of B-level movies, but then there was Ben Stiller's company, Red Hour, I think, and we were pretty much they were like, we want it. It was pretty much all we had to do was sign papers or something, and then something comes up where they back out. But my agent, who has since passed, he's died, he was this book is a movie. He was dead set on it, right?
Mhm.
And to the point where he was like, Jake Gyllenhaal is playing you, like you today. Do you know what I mean?
You
like,
today, who's playing you as a football player,
right? And that would be
or
the obstacle, but
Jake just gonna get in the gym for.
But or he was still young enough.
Right.
I mean, that was 2008 when
Right.
the book came out, so that was 12 years ago now. And that's what actually he was thinking, like he could beef up and.
Who would be good is the guy that plays Bane. The actor, the British guy, because he can be big, but he's also been skinny though. He'd be kind of good.
Yeah.
I can't think of his name. Tom
Hardy. His name.
Tom Hardy.
Oh yeah. But my agent was calling. I mean, to the point he somehow tracked down Jake Gyllenhaal's mother's cell phone and was calling and like having like ongoing conversations with her about why he needs to be and star in this movie. And ultimately it never came about. Every now and then there's somebody that pops up, but I'm just at the point where it's like, if it's going to get done, then it's going to get done by somebody who knows what they're doing. And I'm not just going to let somebody who maybe, was born and raised in Nebraska or something, but never really done a movie. Like, you just want it to be done right. So, some interest, but, and sometimes, it's just time. You just need time to pass, like sometimes when it's fresh right out and
it's too soon.
You never know. So it's something that I certainly don't think about, every single day. But we'll see. I certainly wouldn't be against it.
Right, now it's got to be going because now, this 30 for 30 for the Bulls is going to start on this Sunday. When's this 30 for 30 was supposed to come out in Nebraska? Because you guys have sat down and recorded this stuff.
So we all did that. So it's done. It's not. They're not going to do it, which is a shame. And a lot of all of that 30 for 30 focused on the stuff that was off the field, and
the negative stuff.
The negative stuff, and Christian was a big topic of that. And I remember the director, Eric Drath, I believe his name was, and he got into it, and he had said, I'm in this thing with an open mind as far as Christian, and whether or not I think, the stuff that she says is true or not. And he went through it, and it was, I want to say, all of the taping and everything was 2-3 years. I mean, of him doing stuff. And at the end, he said to Christian and myself, he's like, I think she's lying, right? And so the whole thing is done pretty much, and ESPN, pretty liberal.
Yeah.
I know the person in charge of the programming for 30 for 30 is a woman. I don't know, with everything that's going on this day and age, if they want to make somebody who basically, has made a life for themselves off of saying, this happened to me, if they want to turn a victim actually into,
Yeah, I get it.
Yeah. And so I think the thing that they did was they just pulled the plug, and so I think it's just sitting on a shelf somewhere, just needing to be put in the machine or push play. But I mean, I know that he had spent a lot of time with Christian. I know he, just for myself, and I was just a smaller part of it. I mean, he was, I did quite a bit of taping with him. But yeah, it's just disappear. It's funny, right? How that, I mean, there was so much hype around it, and then all of a sudden it's just like, I think what they've used some like it's in editing or some or
I don't know because it was just
some
like
stuff.
two years ago. It was like this thing's coming out.
Yeah.
And I haven't really heard anything since. I had this popped in my head like, oh, let's ask this. You still got a celebrity crush?
Ah, man.
Let you out. I mean, I can give you another question. I had another one. I always have a few written up because I asked Bo Rude, and when we did this, I go, give me a karaoke song that you could sing verbatim. Otherwise, you get like a trach dart to your neck. You know.
A karaoke.
Yeah, use
song.
one song you can sing. It was like
with
perfectly
every single word.
Yeah, like you can just know.
Man, I don't know if I could get a whole song in. I run around the house with the kids, like singing Rob Bass, Rob Bass and Easy Rock. Sometimes some Adidas. Sometimes it's just like you need to hear it on the radio.
Right, and then you got it.
Like some Run DMC or something like that, or even like NWA. But yeah, it's funny how
he couldn't. He's like, I don't have one. He's like, I don't think I could do it.
Yeah, I don't. Do you have one that you could sing from start to finish?
See, I have to think about it. Like, I think I could sing like a Journey song, like just a small town girl. Have that? I can't think of the. Yeah, like I'm not gonna sing her with shit, but like I think I can do it.
Like John Cougar, Mellencamp,
like
Jack and Diane, two American kids growing up in LA.
Like
if I heard like a Bowie song, I could probably. So when Sharpie and I were doing the show up in Omaha, we started, where the Bowie, I would be singing horribly. It's funny how like my kids, sometimes they think like, oh, Dad, you can sing, all right? And
right.
Like they were doing like they were video chatting with one of their friends or something, and I was singing that Shallow song from Lady Gaga, right? And my oldest daughter's friend is on listening, and she's like, oh my gosh, she's like, your dad's a really, really good singer. And like I know, like I'm horrible, like nasally and everything else.
Right.
But yeah, it's
no. I could. The song I know I could sing for sure. Like the Journey was because that was a half-assed response because I could sing some Zach Brown. I could sing some of his stuff.
See, I don't know any Zach Brown. I've never really gotten into country music.
I'm not a huge country. I can do like Zach Brown, like Jason Aldean, some of the newer stuff,
right?
Like Luke Combs, like his stuff. But yeah, some of his stuff I could sing just because I've been to a couple of his concerts and summer sitting on the porch drinking some cold Coors Lights with some Zach Brown band.
What about the Barefoot guy?
That's him.
The Barefoot Sandals guy. Who?
Oh, I think that's talking about the Zach Brown song.
Oh no, I'm thinking of the Kenny Chesney.
Oh yeah.
Is that too like country?
I'm not a big Kenny Chesney.
Because the newer stuff has more rock, like.
Yeah, it's. I like the new stuff because it's not that far from like Leonard Skinner type stuff. Like the soulful rock.
Yeah.
See,
I like Leonard Skinner.
See, I don't like Garth Brooks. Not for me.
Right.
No. I can't do that stuff. That's too twangy. That's too.
I never understood, man. Like those guys, they would come like to town, and back then it was like guitars and Cadillacs.
Oh
yeah. But my gosh, man, they would. The entire state. It was like that's the closest thing to like a Nebraska football game is like you get somebody like Garth Brooks or somebody to come through. Yeah. I mean they would come through.
Yeah, I can't. Some people, George Strait's the country king to some people. I'm just like I can't do it.
Yeah.
I can't do it. I need the newer stuff. So.
Oh man, I'm still trying to think of somebody that. I like Megan Fox. She was when she was back in
like Transformers.
Yeah. She was.
There's a lot.
And like acting doesn't have anything to do with it. We're just talking,
Yeah, hell no.
Yeah. Andy Roddick's wife, that Brooklyn Decker. She's cute. She's. You know who else who I think is cute, sexy. She's the one who got kind of passed around the pro hockey players. She did that one where she's like the porn star and she ends up moving next to like this high school kid. And
yes.
But she went out with the instigator who played for the Rangers, Sean Avery.
Oh yeah. God, who is that?
Right, and then she was married to like, is it not Mike Modano, somebody from the Stars, but like he would basically be like in Game 7 playoffs, and he'd be like, yeah. I fuck your wife or something, you know what I mean? Like, he was like the definition of instigator, but she was a Canadian gal. I can't remember what her name was.
I know what you're talking about, but
that's
brain's,
the problem. I can't remember my name.
No, my brain's
going
to mush now too. All right, brother. Hey, man. Appreciate it.
Anytime.
The hour and a half. This will be good for people to listen to. Thanks for tuning in, folks. That's another More to It podcast, LRC Magazine, LRC.com.